Okay, I want you to imagine a piece of paper. Just a standard government-issued document sitting on a desk somewhere in Wiltshire, England.
Right.
It's dated April 1953. It's got logistics, formulas, a schedule. But buried in there, in the approval section, there's a single phrase that it stands out.
Non-therapeutic.
Exactly, non-therapeutic.
Which is such a bureaucratic, a sanitized way of saying this isn't to help you.
Right, this isn't medicine, this is a weapon.
Exactly.
And the man this document was about, he signed nothing, he was told almost nothing, he walked into a room, and he never walked out again. So today, we are not just talking about a cold case. We are doing a deep dive into the Porton Down human experiments.
And this is a heavy one. I mean, going through the source material, it's frustrating because you're not looking at some rogue scientist in a lab.
No.
You're looking at a system, a 50-year silence that was maintained by, one of the most respected institutions in the Western world.
It honestly sounds like the plot of a thriller. A secret facility, a young soldier, a cover-up, files that go missing.
But it's all documented fact.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have the files, the inquest reports. What are we actually talking about? What is Porton Down?
So Porton Down is this huge scientific installation in Wiltshire.
Yeah.
It actually goes all the way back to the First World War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was set up as Britain's Center for Chemical Warfare Research. Mustard gas, chlorine, the horrors of the trenches.
Right.
But by the early 1950s, the world is a different place. The Cold War is freezing over, and Porton Down has become one of the most secretive installations in the entire country.
And what was the official line? Because these places always have a noble mission statement, right? They don't put, "We test weapons on people" on the brochure.
Of course not. The official mandate was purely defensive. The whole idea was to study chemical threats, specifically new nerve agents from the Soviet Union, so they could design better gas masks, better protective suits.
Which makes sense. We need to know how the poison works to build the shield.
Precisely. That sounds totally reasonable on paper. But here's the thing the research really highlights. In chemical warfare, that line between defensive and offensive research is incredibly thin.
How so?
Well, to test a gas mask, you can't just put it on a mannequin. You need to know how a gas interacts with sweat, with movement, with living, breathing skin.
And that's where the mandate sort of expanded.
It expanded to include what the documents call controlled human testing. And let me tell you, that phrase does a lot of heavy lifting in the official reports.
Controlled human testing. I mean, that phrase alone is chilling. But before we get to the tragedy of Ronald Maddison, I want to understand the mindset. In 2024, if a government said, "We're going to drip nerve agents on our citizens," there would be riots. Why was this acceptable in 1953?
Context is absolutely everything here. You have to try and put yourself in the shoes of a military commander in the early 50s. The Nuremberg Code, which set out the ethical rules for human experiments after World War II, that was only a few years old. The ink was barely dry. But at the same time, there was this genuine, pervasive belief that World War III was just around the corner.
So they really thought the Soviets were going to drop chemical weapons on London.
They thought it was practically guaranteed. The intelligence reports from that time, they paint a picture of just total paranoia. They were convinced the Soviets had these massive stockpiles of nerve agents.
And so in that climate of fear...
In that climate, the definition of what was necessary completely shifted. The ethical lines got blurry because they felt, national survival was literally at stake.
So fear was driving the whole thing.
Fear and urgency. They felt they were behind and they needed data now.
Okay, so they need human subjects, but you can't just grab people off the street. The sources mention thousands of servicemen. How did they get these men to agree to this?
They recruited them from inside the services, the Army, the RAF, the Navy. And this is where the story gets really, really murky. The recruitment relied on what you could call a bait and switch.
Okay, so what was the bait?
A break from the daily grind. I mean, imagine you're a young soldier, you're peeling potatoes, getting yelled at all day, and someone offers you a few days leave. A trip to the countryside, a few extra shillings in your pocket.
It sounds like a holiday, a no-brainer.
Exactly. They made it sound like a really soft assignment.
And the switch. What were they actually told they'd be doing?
The lie was subtle, but it was significant. They were told they were volunteering to help with research on protective equipment or, clothing. Sometimes they were even led to believe it was for the Common Cold Research Unit.
The Common Cold?
Or mild irritants like tear gas. Things that were, sure, uncomfortable, but totally routine.
So they're thinking they're going to test a new raincoat, Maybe get watery eyes for 10 minutes, and then go to the pub with some extra cash.
That's it. There was this huge gap between the soldier's expectation, I'm helping test a gas mask,
Yep.
and the reality. The reality was they were becoming biological subjects for some of the deadliest substances on Earth.
And they were just walking into it completely blind.
Completely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the heart of this. We need to talk about May 6th, 1953.
May 6th, the day everything changed, even though nobody outside that facility would know for decades. Who was the victim here?
His name was leading aircraftman Ronald Maddison. He was 20 years old.
Just a kid.
He was just a kid. He came to Porton Down from RAF's Scampton. And like the others, he thought he was there for something routine.
Yeah.
We have records of a letter he wrote home saying he was just there for a few days to make some extra money.
Oh, wow.
He was saving up for an engagement ring.
That detail, it really just grounds it, doesn't it? He's planning his future.
His whole life was ahead of him. So that morning, he's taken into a laboratory. It's all very controlled. Scientists are behind glass or they're in full protective gear. Madison is just told to roll up his sleeve.
And then?
They taped a piece of fabric to the inside of his forearm. And then, with a pipette, they applied a very specific amount of liquid.
Just a drop, that's all it was.
Just a drop. Specifically 200 milligrams.
And do we know what that liquid was?
We do. It was pure sarin.
Okay, let's pause right there. Sarin is a word we hear on the news, usually tied to war crimes or terrorist attacks. For anyone listening who isn't a chemist, what is it? How is it different from something like mustard gas?
That's a great question. Mustard gas is a blistering agent. It physically burns your skin and your lungs. It's horrible, but it works like an acid. Sarin is. It's completely different. It's a nerve agent. It hacks your body's internal communication system.
How does it do that?
Well, think of your nerves like little wires sending signals to your muscles. Contract, relax, breathe. After a signal is sent, your body makes a chemical to stop that signal so the muscle can relax. Sarin blocks the stop chemical.
So the switch gets stuck in the on position.
Exactly. Every muscle in your body tries to contract at once and just won't stop. You start convulsing, you lose control of all bodily functions, and eventually the muscles that control your breathing just lock up. You suffocate from the inside.
And this is what they put on a 20-year-old's arm.
Yes. And here's the crucial thing the source material makes clear. The scientists knew this. They had studied sarin since capturing it from Nazi Germany. They knew it was lethal. And crucially, they knew it was unpredictable when absorbed through the skin.
So they weren't testing if it was dangerous. They already knew that.
No. They were essentially testing how much it took to kill, or how fast.
So what happened to Madison?
The reaction was almost immediate. He started saying he couldn't see properly, his vision was going blurry. Then he started sweating profusely. Within minutes, he collapsed.
And the scientists, did they do anything?
They did. The medical staff panicked when they saw how severe it was. They tried to resuscitate him. They injected him with atropine, which is the standard antidote, but it was already too late.
The reaction was too fast.
He died that afternoon.
That's just horrifying. A healthy young man walks in, and minutes later, he's dead. How do you even explain that away in 1953?
You don't explain it. You bury it. And this is the part that really shows the power of the bureaucracy. The official cause of death was recorded as misadventure.
Misadventure? That sounds like he tripped on a rug.
It's a legal term that implies an accident, bad luck, and certainly no wrongdoing by the state. And that label, misadventure, that was the first brick in a wall of silence that would stand for 50 years.
Oh, what did they tell his parents?
They lied. His father was told he died during a routine experiment that went wrong. In some early letters, they even implied it was related to pneumonia.
Pneumonia? That's not even in the same ballpark.
Not even close. They were never told about the sarin. They weren't given the autopsy records. There was an inquest in 1953, but it was held in camera.
In camera?
Behind closed doors. Secret court. The public was barred. Evidence was withheld on the grounds of what?
National security?
You guessed it. National security. It was the ultimate shield. And government letters from that time, which have only recently been declassified, they show the motivation wasn't just fear of a lawsuit. It was a PR fear.
They were worried about how it would look.
Terrified. They knew if the British public found out they were testing Nazi-developed nerve agents on their own conscripts, it would destroy trust in the military. So the calculation was made. Better to lie to one family than to face the public.
But Madison can't have been the only one. If they were testing sarin, they must have been doing other things.
Oh, the scope is. It's staggering. We're not talking about a dozen people. Between 1945 and 1989, more than 20,000 servicemen took part in these tests.
20,000? That's the population of a small town.
It is. Now, Not all of them were exposed to sarin. Some got tear gas, mustard gas, other toxins. But the common thread, the thing that ties them all together, was the lack of informed consent.
Which is the key legal concept, right? Informed consent.
Yeah.
I know the risks, and I agree.
Exactly. If I tell you, this might make your eyes water, and then I hit you with a nerve agent, I have not obtained your consent. And the internal documents show the scientists knew this. They developed this specific language. They called the volunteers observers, not subjects.
Observers? As if they were just watching.
Right. It sounds passive. It sounds like they aren't being experimented on. It was semantic gymnastics to get around the Nuremberg Code.
That is chilling. Using a thesaurus to justify what you're doing.
And for decades it worked. The files were locked away, and the other survivors went back to their lives.
But secrets like this have a way of getting out, especially when people start getting sick.
Correct. By the 1990s, that silence started to crack. You had former participants, now in their 60s and 70s, starting to come forward. They were reporting all these strange, long-term health problems.
And I'm guessing the government said, let's check those records?
Hardly. The official line was, we have no record of that. Or, there's no proof that this chemical from 1954 caused your asthma in 1995. The absence of records became the defense.
It's institutional gaslighting.
It is. But it took incredible persistence from the families and survivors. And finally, after 50 years of pressure, the case of Ronald Maddison was forced open. In 2004, the High Court ordered a new inquest.
And this time, it was public.
This time, the doors were wide open. This was the reckoning. Previously classified documents were unsealed. Expert testimony was finally heard.
That must have been an incredibly tense courtroom.
Unbelievably tense. Yeah. You had Madison's family finally hearing the truth, and you had the establishment trying to explain why it was all necessary.
And the verdict.
The jury came back and completely overturned the original misadventure. They returned a verdict of unlawful killing.
Wow, unlawful killing. That's not just a slap on the wrist. That sounds like a crime.
It is. The jury concluded two huge things. One, Madison had not given informed consent. And two, the experiment was conducted with a reckless disregard for his safety. They basically said the scientists were gambling with his life.
So 50 years later, the truth is out. But
Yeah.
did anyone go to jail?
No. And this is where you feel a sense of incomplete justice. Unlawful killing would normally trigger a criminal investigation. But the Crown Prosecution Service looked at it. They looked at the time that had passed, half a century. Many of the key people were dead or very elderly, and they looked at the legal complexities of things like Crown immunity that existed back then.
So legally, their hands were tied.
No individual was ever prosecuted. The Ministry of Defense did issue a formal, unreserved apology. They admitted the gross violation, compensation was paid, but it was a settlement, not a sentence.
And what about the other 20,000 men, the ones who suffered later?
That's the lingering tragedy. For many, recognition came too late, or not at all. Claims for compensation were often rejected because the burden of proof was on the soldier. If your medical file from 1955 is missing, how do you prove anything?
It feels like the bureaucracy won in the end. The system was designed to protect itself, and it worked.
And that gets us to a really crucial point. What makes this whole story so unsettling isn't just the chemical, it's how methodically it was all normalized.
Right. You imagine these evil figures, but reading the material, they sound like managers.
They were civil servants, they were scientists. Internal memos talk about risk in terms of statistics, of acceptable losses. The moral weight was just flattened by paperwork.
The banality of evil.
It is. It was a culture of urgency and fear. The experiments were approved through formal channels. Reports were filed in triplicate. On paper, everything looked correct. What was missing was the basic human question. Should we even be doing this?
They were so busy asking, can we? They forgot to ask, should we?
Exactly. And Porton Down is still there today, right?
It is. It's now called the Defense Science and Technology Laboratory, DSTL. It's a world-leading facility. They do incredible work on vaccines, on counterterrorism. It's a vital national asset.
And presumably they don't trick soldiers into gas chambers anymore.
No, the ethical guidelines today are incredibly strict. You have independent oversight, real informed consent, but, and it's a big but, the sources point out, many of the original Cold War files remain closed.
Still. Even after the inquest.
Yes. The reasons are familiar. National security, the chemical formulas are still relevant. So even today, we don't have the complete picture. We know the shape of the iceberg, but not how deep it really goes.
It's just a sobering story. We started with a signature in 1953 and ended with a verdict in 2004. But that gap, That 50-year gap is where the real horror is.
The tragedy is the silence, the human cost of that silence.
I think the key takeaway, really, is the danger of losing sight of the individual. The scariest part of this story isn't the sarin. It's the fact that a system can become so focused on security that it forgets the very people it's supposed to be securing.
It forces you to look at institutions differently.
And here's the thought I want to leave the listener with, something from the source material that really stuck with me. When that file on Ronald Maddison was finally opened, the authorization for the test had a single signature, just one man.
No committee, no ethical review.
No dissenting opinion recorded in that file. No debate. It was just assigned. That one decision, made quietly at a desk, ended a life and set a precedent.
And no one looked at it again for 50 years.
Exactly. So the question isn't just about the past. It's about now. If a decision that lethal can be buried for half a century, how many similar decisions, made quietly, filed away, and never examined, are sitting in government archives right now?
That's a question that will definitely keep me up tonight. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.